speaking of 100 days, 100 years, he speaks about World War II like he was in his mid-20s when it happened, because he talks about, when I saw it, he doesn't quite say that, but it sounds like he was personally, maybe he was old Methuselah here. We've got to have a look at this. This is obviously the bigger, you know what, if people out there who are a supporter of this dude think that Joe Biden is too old to be president, you know who's turning, it's 80 this year, I believe. This dude.
Yeah.
This dude. So, just P's and Q's. Anyway, he decided to evoke, like every seasoned debater does, Nazi Germany when talking about New Zealand policy. This is on with the AM show. This was a strange conversation. And I think, to be fair, that the delay between the videos might have contributed a little bit to it. But, as soon as you say Winston Peters, you don't need any other excuse for a strange interview. Let's be honest about that. I know I've said this before, Clint. He is fun to interview, but there's not a lot of substance here anymore. He's lost a step, certainly. So let's start this conversation on the AM show. Now, I'm not playing the bit that he talked about before, because he's making this case today that the reason he made a comparison about Nazi Germany was because of something that Waititi said about the DNA of Māori. So that's been left off. He does pick up on it, but I just wanted you to know what's been said in the last couple of minutes, because we're not going to watch the whole thing. We're just going to watch about 90 seconds of it right now. Talking to Lloyd this morning about the comments about comparing co-governance to Nazi Germany.
Why did you pin this on Labour, though? Why didn't you say that this was a Te Pāti Māori thing if that's what was said at the time?
Because that's the pathway down which they went. The whole thing about Three Waters was that Māori would own the water of our country, something that's a gift from heaven. All of Polynesian, all of Māoridom knows it's a gift from heaven to be shared with everybody. It's an ugly face of modern radical Māoridism, Māori elitism, and the mass majority of Māori hate this. They know it's not them. And all I'm saying is we need a reality check here.
Yeah, and I get the point that you're making, because that's the point you're making about co-governance. But bringing the Holocaust into it, do you understand that that's inappropriate, and that the Holocaust Centre of New Zealand said you shouldn't be throwing words like that and comparisons like that around willy-nilly?
You can rush off like the mainstream media after a year when this man made those racist comments.
This is the other thing Winston's doing more and more and more. And I'm actually going to play a short clip as well from breakfast, where one of the other NZ First MPs was on. Sorry. Don't know his name. Why would you? Winston First. But the double down, triple down, quadruple down on media, and I've written down in my notes where he says you've done this, and when he says you, he means every single part of media, every single journalist. I mean, I would say you to Lloyd if Lloyd had done something, but he says you've done this and you've done that. Yeah, sorry, Clint.
Yeah, it's pretending that the media, like the media party, you hear that phrase thrown around, as if the media is organised, unitary outfit that have a single agenda. We can go into media theory, but they certainly at this level they're not like a political party. But that's how he frames it.
Yeah, so we'll get the show. There is many rants coming from Mr. Peters, but here's just one of them.
Waititi, when you did nothing. And you can rush off to the people from the Jewish community and say, what do you think of this? But my question is, how did you phrase the question? Did you mention Waititi's statement last year? Did you ask them what that meant back in Germany when it all started? No, you didn't. So I'm not being put off by that sort of behaviour from you guys at all.
Well, it's not from us. It's from the New Zealand Holocaust Centre.
Oh, no, but you rushed off to see them. But did you tell them what and why I said it? Did you point out to him that Waititi...
I don't think that's true, by the way. I think the Holocaust Centre put out an independent statement. I'm not 100% on that, right. But I don't think you, the media, rushed off and knocked on their door and was like, hey, give us a statement because he says it's like Nazi Germany. I think they had an independent
that's right.
PR bit come out.
You said that they were superior to everybody else in this country? No, you didn't. So
no, but you didn't even mention that in your speech, though.
Yeah.
Mention what?
The specific example you've given me for the reason that you made the comments.
Yes, I did. I mentioned what he said. I said that this comment about superior DNA, and I know where that began. That sort of thinking, and know where what the consequences of it are if they're unchecked, and they were by the mainstream media unchecked until I mentioned it the other day.
And so then he becomes the savior of the media, because obviously if he hadn't have done it, the media would go downhill in a heartbeat. I'd love to get your thoughts on that first. But so I think that's pretty much all we're going to play of Winston. The others, some response to him, but actually there might be the original quote as well, but that's the start of the conversation with Winston, basically blaming everyone but himself for the words that come out of his mouth.
Well, you know the funny thing, I went and actually read the text of the speech, which is up on News Hub, and it's obviously the text that they've been given from New Zealand First, not a transcript, because the stuff about Nazi Germany isn't in there. He ad-libbed that.
He ad-libbed it, yeah.
and that's why it's so incongruous. And it's quite funny that he kind of does do this, Winston. Like, his speech is pretty long and rambling, but whatever his message was meant to be has been totally sidelined by these Nazi comments, which everyone knows are ridiculous. And then saying it's about he's reacting to some comments that the Māori Party co-leader made at some point that no one's heard of.
And blaming Labour for it. That's the other thing.
Something that's bedeviled Peters over a very long political career is that he tends to get distracted into fights that no one else quite understands. And it'd be a lot better if he focused on the issues that his supporters actually care about.
Were you working with Jacinda Ardern when they formed that government and he was Deputy Prime Minister? Were you around then? Have you got any insights as to who he is as a person?
Yeah. So I was doing the kind of the policy strategy and stuff heading into the 2017 election. I wasn't part of the negotiations, but was sort of watching that from the outside. And then I was ministerial advisor for Phil Twyford for a year or so in government, and dealt with Winston in his office a few times. He is very experienced, and he kind of gave Twyford a few lessons in not believing everything the officials are telling you, which is something that Phil learned to his regret. But he is very experienced. He is very wily. But he's also self-sabotaging with things like this. He's a complex figure, I guess is the best way to put it. And it's like his politics, some of it, even in the speech on the weekend, he was talking about we've fallen behind Australia on wages because we had the neoliberal revolution undermined wages and conditions here, and that's been terrible, which is all true. But then you look at his voting record, he just repealed FPAs. So, a man of contradictions.
So New Zealand First MP Andy Foster, who was obviously the mayor of, I'm saying obviously like I knew this, I did know this, but I'd forgotten, who was the mayor of Wellington, was on the other channel. Don't know if it was while Winston was going on. Probably not, because Winston probably needs to see exactly what's going on with all of his MPs. So it might have been at a slightly different time. And Andy was asked by, I think we're going to be looking at Anna Burns-Francis, were Winston Peters' comments offensive? Let's pick it up there. And it's around about talking about everything. The media is completely responsible for all of these things. No dribble or shit that drops out of Winston Peters' mouth is his fault. It's all the media's fault. I don't know.
Andy, I'll start with you. Were Winston Peters' comments offensive?
Look, I think take the speech as a whole. What he was saying is that we are in a bit of a mess as a country. Labor's left us.
That's not what he said, though, Andy. That's not what he said.
He spoke for an hour or so. So he said a lot of things. The key focus was that our country is in a mess. We've been handed an economy which is performing poorly. We've been handed services which are performing poorly, and also that we're more divided than ever. And that was the context for those particular comments. That.
Yeah, no shit, chief divider. I mean, I'll tell you something. To tangent a little bit, I had a conversation with someone in the weekend who's got a close personal friend of theirs who thinks Winston is bringing Māori together. Like, that's their opinion. They're like, Winston Peters is the man to bring Māori together. And I'm just like, you okay. It would be nice to live in that metaverse. I'm not quite sure how that works, but some people
maybe
see
in
it
the 1990s for a little bit.
Yeah. And I talk about what it typically is. It's like, the brother or the friend of my friend, the enemy of my enemy is my enemy. enemy is my friend. Enemy of my enemy is my friend. There's that thing that if you can align with someone who seems to be saying what you already believe, then they're right and they're the people. So for all of these people who are thinking, bloody Maori, they're getting too much and that's not what they deserve, if they hear it from Winston, then they go, well, Winston's trying to bring them all together. He's right, only because he is confirming their bias. Confirmation bias is there already, and that's why he's, strangely enough, quite attractive to a whole lot of old white people. Really strange.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what Andy's response there of, look at the whole speech, in other words. Yeah, what he said about that Germany's indefensible, and I'm not going to try to defend it. Look at all the rest of the speech. Sorry,
I think that point gets made because I think one of them makes the point that, all the attention's being taken away because of this one sentence. And I think the response is, well, he shouldn't have put that one sentence in, should he? And then it wouldn't be getting taken away from it. So it's chicken or egg. All right, we'll keep going.
Labor did put us in a position where different people were treated differently because of their race.
That's not Nazi Germany, though. That's so far away from what happened in Nazi Germany and the Holocaust.
With the greatest respect, Anna, this is pretty normal media behaviour. You focus on one sentence and not on the overall context of what was being said.
I mean, I didn't say it. The Deputy Prime Minister, one of the leaders of this country, compared co-governance to the mass murder of 6 million people.
No. What he said was the distinction is about people being treated differently because of their race.
Yeah.
But he didn't say it that way, did he? He invoked some language that the Holocaust Centre has said is offensive to the memory of those who died, to those who survived the Holocaust, and to start throwing around terms like that is willy-nilly. We have seen society grow increasingly numb to inflammatory comments. What we saw today was simply an example of the sort of breakdown of society. They're offended.
Anna, you're absolutely right. We have seen things like genocide being thrown around right, left and centre as well, which is also offensive to the Jewish community.
So does Winston Peters owe an apology then? If the comments can be offensive to the Jewish community, should he owe them an apology?
I think what you need to do is to sit down and take the comments as a whole, and that is what the media are not doing.
It's not us, Andy. The Holocaust Centre literally says they are offensive.
Anna, it is you. Sorry.
I mean, I'm not a member of the Holocaust Centre. I'm not a spokesperson for them.
No, but it is the media who are focused on one line out of an hour-long speech.
Yeah. So do you want to get a heads up that Winston's direction of attacking the media in a Trumpian style is flowing through his MPs? It's right there, Clint.
Yeah. And then he's just like, how quickly can I get this interview over?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. All he can do is try to deflect with this rubbish about, look at the whole speech and it's your fault. It's your fault for quoting the leader when he said that thing.
How dare you use his words against him? Don't you do that. What are you doing?
How dare you ask me what I meant when I said what I said?
Yeah. I do have a question for you, though. The question I wanted to ask you, because, again, having been in those halls occasionally, how long is a new government, in your opinion, allowed to keep blaming the old government? Like, when does the statutes of limitation end? Like, if they're being honest, we know that they're not being honest about tax take, because what they're doing at the moment is they're saying the way Labor left their books are making it hard for us to do X. And the truth is, it's hard for you to do X because your projected revenue is so much less than you thought it would be or that you promised it would be. But how long would you think it's reasonable? Like, if you were speaking to a leader, and at what point would you kind of go, hey, I think it's a bit late now to be blaming the opposition when they were in government? What do you reckon is fair?
I mean, in honesty, government does take years to turn around if that's what you're trying to do.
Yep.
The issue more here is that they're all claiming that it was in an amorphous way, things were left badly. Although then you hear Shane Reedy admit that Labor put up nurses' wages by a lot, and that's the issue of the nurses' wages.
But he didn't quite do that, did he? He didn't quite say Labor did it. He said over subsequent years or previous years or whatever. He didn't quite evoke the word Labor, which would have been a disaster anyway.
Yeah. But it's when we were setting up the government build program, building all the state houses and stuff, that was a machine that took years to get building up, right? Like if you want more doctors and nurses, they take years to train. So there are things that do, if you want to build a road, years. It genuinely does take a lot of time. But I'm not seeing anything that this government is saying, look, here's our plan to fix health. And yeah, it is going to take some time because it's a big program to do X or Y. So they're sort of stuck blaming the last government, but not offering the solution.
Yeah,
and that's
again.
where I think that's why people get sick of it. And that's where that I think actually is probably the time that people get sick of it, is when you're still blaming the other guys, but you don't have an alternative. And so that's obviously a movable feast, but they're hitting that wall pretty quickly.
Yeah, all right. Now, I want to play, this is just a 30-second clip, right? But this is the next question that was asked of the Green MP who was on there as well, Ricardo Menendez-March, because he brings up a beautiful point about his old mate Andy when it comes to co-governance. And I just wanted that, if it hasn't been seen by people. You know, sometimes what we like doing, Clint, here is sort of giving people ammunition or informing them so they can also know. So if this conversation comes up tomorrow or this evening or whatever about Winston Peters and co-governance, just remember this about Mr. Andy Foster, isn't it?
There's two things here. One of them is when Andy was mayor of Wellington, he actually supported co-governance policies when he was mayor. So I think there's a bit of hypocrisy here. But the second part is, of course, these comments are not appropriate. And for a politician who loves to blame the left of things like virtue signaling, that is one speech that was full of dog whistles and very little substance on how we address things like the rising cost of living, climate change, and people not having access to healthcare.
There you go. I just wanted to give you a little counterpoint there. And, you know, not only are you having to defend your leader for your leader's words, but why are you having a problem now with co-governance when you're all for it? As mayor, perhaps, Clint.
Yeah, well, when he was mayor, he was really in the driver's seat. He had to make those decisions. And, you know, government isn't doing co-governance out of the goodness of its heart. It's doing it because it's bound to by the treaty, and if it doesn't, it'll find itself in general treaty breaches for decades to come. And so when he was mayor, he had to deal with it, but now he's a backbench MP and he can pretend it's not real.
Not just the treaty obligations as well. I haven't got the story with me, but I saw a new one that came up today talking about the cost of New Zealand's water infrastructure and how many billions that's going to be. And what we're continually telling people, you guys know this, what we keep saying to people is, under a centralised government version of Three Waters, Gore, our content point is always Gore, Clint, because they were something like $30 million under, not enough ratepayers to pay for it. And also, there's no magic barrier between Dunedin where we are and Gore. You know, the bad water issues from there flow up to other places, you know, only as strong as my weakest link. Gore's not going to be able to pay for that without about a $5,000 rate increase. So all these stories that are coming out now, all the people who are complaining about their rates, is because your mayors have done you a disservice by not being honest with you about necessities, and then places like Groundswell have done you more of a disservice, convincing you that Three Waters was about the bloody Maoris owning water. And this is the downstream, pardon the pun, effect of it, Clint.
Yeah. Well, do you remember when Kieran McNulty was put in charge of it and he went away and, he, you know, to be fair to him, he went around all the councils, had a talk to them and came back with a slightly revised plan. But he came out to the media and he said, and I love the way Kieran talks, goes, look, here's the guts of it. We need to spend $180 billion on fixing the pipes. No one wants to spend that money, and the councils can't afford to. So look, here's the solution. It's the only viable path. And he's right. And, you know, Labour lost the politics on Three Waters. And
sure.
But they were right on the substance. And now we've got this situation where councils all up and down the country can't afford to pay for their pipes. And, you know, the fear is, well, the fear for the left, probably the plan for the right, is it's going to lead to privatisation. Yeah. Remember the stink that the right kicked up when Labour went to entrench public ownership of these water services. You know, that so right now, any council up and down the country can turn around and sell its pipes tomorrow to a private owner. And we only need to look to the UK, where Scotland has the model that Labour wanted to put in, and England sold theirs off, and the Scots pay about a third as much and have better water. And that's a fear that we're going down the English path when we need to have the Scottish one.
The last part of this conversation is, of course, the man who we refer to as our feckless leader, being led around by the nose by his Deputy Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister in waiting. When asked about the comments, he didn't say what he often says, which is, I haven't seen those comments. He did say, though, I haven't spoken to him yet. This is what the Prime Minister said about Winston Peters' comments today.
Have you spoken to Winston Peters about the comments he made yesterday about Nazi Germany?
No, I haven't had a chance to do so, but I do. We talk regularly, and I plan to talk to him about it.
The Prime Minister wants some decorum back.
Calling on people from all political parties to maintain the civility in our politics, and I don't think extreme language on either side from any particular party is actually helpful or necessary.
He employed some diplomatic language on Peters.
That's not what I would say. I don't think that is, those aren't the way that I would phrase it at all.
I think Christopher Luxon at the
yeah, it's about as close as he's ever got to sending any kind of reprimand towards those two people. I don't think that's how I would say it. What are your thoughts about his response?
Well, a wet bus ticket, eh? I mean, Winston's going to continue to do what he wants. Seymour's going to continue to do what he wants. And the interpersonal relationship between these guys was set back in the negotiations when you had Luxon going up and down the country trying to get Winston into a meeting. And as soon as Winston knew he had the whip hand, then he's kept it ever since. And, I haven't had the chance to talk to him. If these guys heard his cell phones, in reality, if you have a minister stuff up like that, you're waiting for the Prime Minister to be on the phone giving them a ballsing, and he chooses not to because ultimately he needs Winston's votes, and he's chosen to take a weak approach to that rather than a strong one.
And as we've said before, David Seymour in particular is walking around and talking like he's got fuck you power over Christopher Luxon. He just doesn't care. Winston Peters has been acting more like a political operative up until this point, but Luxon has been just going, I'll do what I want when I want, and because I'm sorry, I don't care what piece of paper was signed in that 5-star hotel. I think Winston in particular, but also Seymour, but not maybe Winston more likely, will blow that thing up in a heartbeat. In fact, Winston Peters today coming out saying he is not compromising on any of his pre-election promises, and he even acknowledges that there's like a $5 billion hole. But even with that $5 billion hole, he is not compromising on anything. So it's going to be a hell of a ride, Clint.
And in some ways, what got buried in this speech was actually that shot across the bow to Luxon saying, I don't have to support anything of your agenda that I don't want to. And I have veto power over your agenda. So you're going to have to give me what I want. And they all have veto power over each other, right? There's 3 of them. They need all 3 to do anything. But the interpersonal relationship between them has been set in such a way that it's Seymour and Peters calling the shots and Luxon pretending to be in charge.
Yeah. I've said it before. I'm sure there's some cartoonists out there. I'm just waiting for the puppet masters, Seymour and Peters up the top, and the strings going down to Luxon in front of the podium. It's just exactly what it is. So from RNZ, I haven't preset this up, so I'll just have a quick read. Winston Peters signals he won't compromise on New Zealand First election commitments. New Zealand First leader Winston Peters has signalled he will not compromise on the rollout of his election commitments, despite warning the government is short billions of dollars. Meanwhile, Finance Minister Nicola Willis denies the $5.6 billion shortfall. So you've got Winston Peters, the Deputy Prime Minister, saying it is there, and you've got the Minister for Finance saying it isn't there, and she says she won't guarantee promised tax cuts will arrive in July until the policy has been discussed by Cabinet during his... And can I just say this again? What wanker does a State of the Nation speech as an opposition leader trying to mimic an American, State of the Union speech? It's so weird. But anyway, during his State of the Nation speech in Palmerston North on Sunday, Peters confirmed reports the government is short $5.6 billion to pay for all of its campaign commitments. So he's a cowboy. He's just like doing what he wants. I mean, he is demonstrating now, to his credit, his own fuck you power. Because Nicola Willis is going, no. And Winston's going, yeah, that's true. I don't care. Give me my shit.
I mean, I don't know why she's trying to deny it. The maths is simple. They put out a table of here's how we pay for our promises. And it's turned out that the taxes they hope to raise, either they're not doing or they raise a fraction of what they estimated would. And the costs have blown out. There's no magic here. You just add up the numbers and there's this giant asshole. And you know, logically you'd then reassess your tax package. And that's actually what Peters is saying is we might not be able to deliver the tax package.
And here's the thing.
I've got my commitments.
Here's the thing for Mr. Peters. And there's been a couple of times where Mr. Luxon has talked about, you know, I'll check in with the Deputy Prime Minister. You don't tell Winston what to do. Like, he has a long memory and he holds grudges. So the question's going to come by reporters to Nicola Willis, so you're saying Winston Peters is wrong. She won't be able to say, yes, he's wrong. They'll do this whole, well, different people say different things, because if they embarrass Winston, they will get the wrath of it. It just, they don't have the ability to do that, to basically say he's wrong. It won't work for them. It just won't work.
She'll make the same kind of excuse she did there of, you'll see the numbers when they're released in the budget.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's always some, like I said before, there's some fairness to her saying, look, I can't tell you what the tax package is going to be because it hasn't been through cabinet yet and it'll be in the budget. That's fair, but her and Luxon have state, they've said they'll resign if they don't deliver income tax cuts. So, you know, they should be able to say, yes, there will be income tax cuts.
Yeah.
Peters is casting doubt on that.